Ecosystem services could be seen as the benefits to man that we gain from the environment. So it is a very anthropogenic way of viewing the environment, but then man does manage a very large proportion of the environment, certainly in the European region. So at the moment, chemical regulation and policy does set protection goals for the environment, but the way they're described is in fairly vague or broad terms, and it doesn't really recognise that the environment is incredibly variable. How that has been translated in practice, I think, for prospective risk assessment schemes like REACH, for example, is that we aim to protect all species in all habitats, all environments, all of the time. So what ecosystem services enables us to do is to think about how to describe the key species that are providing services from different kinds of habitats. That enables us then to set more clear specific protection goals for different habitats. And then that enables you to have a much more focused risk assessment, which is more relevant to different parts of the environment. So we move away from a very generic approach to something that's a little bit more targeted, more relevant to different areas of the environment. You would follow the pathway of the chemical through the different habitats, and as it passes through each habitat, you would aim to identify the key service providing species from each habitat and make a risk assessment comparing the exposure at that stage in that habitat with those key species and the underpinning species, and check that the exposure is not exceeding a toxic threshold for all of those species. ECETOC brings a very focused scientific approach to the question of applying ecosystem services to chemical risk assessment. So ECETOC has set up a task force to really look at a framework that has been developed by the European Foods Safety Authority for applying an ecosystem approach for deriving protection goals and then informing risk assessment. And the task force has been looking at how that framework might be applied in a broader sense across a wider range of chemical sectors. So we did that by looking at a number of case study chemical types. So we looked at what we call down the drain chemicals, chemicals in consumer products that were discharged into sewer systems and then reach the aquatic environment largely. We looked at an oil refinery in an estuarine ecosystem. We looked at the use of oil dispersant chemicals in a coastal zone, and we looked at an industrial chemical that might undergo long-range transport. So for each of those different chemical profiles and exposure regimes, we followed the EFSA framework to see how it would apply more broadly, and the outcome was very favourable. Actually, we thought the overall framework worked well, just there was a lot more detail and a lot more guidance needed in terms of how to apply it.